welcome to Doors and Corners, a sci-fi and fantasy film commentary podcast. I'm Brian.
And I'm Zach. And every Friday we sit down and watch a science fiction or fantasy film and give our 2 cents on its quality, production, story, and trivia.
We watch the film together, but without sounds or visuals provided to avoid copyright issues. But if you do have access, we encourage you to join us and follow along.
Here, we like to keep things casual, and there may be discussions of spoilers or sensitive materials or language. But we do try and keep things clean and family-friendly. Ultimately, the goal of this podcast is to create the experience of us all sitting down and watching this movie together.
So get ready to hit that play button, because we're about to get started.
Damn Doors and Corners, that's where they get you.
Welcome back to Doors and Corners. I'm Brian.
I'm Zach.
And tonight, we got a one-off, but a really fun one. This is a movie that wasn't huge, but wasn't, it's kind of right in the middle. It made money, but didn't do enough to become a cult thing, but it's the one that I still love very, very much. Frequency.
Mm-hmm. Frequency. My dad loved this movie. I think this is another one of those straight up dad movies. We've had it listed under our science fiction movies, but upon reviewing and things like that, I'm wondering if this is actually a fantasy.
Kind of, because it doesn't. Its explanations. It doesn't even attempt to explain how the aurora borealis can create, radio waves through time.
A rift in time.
Because it's just radio waves, and apparently only them, right? Because, I guess there could have been other ham operators, right?
Well, actually, you know what? I think that it does fit with a fantasy thing, because I think that there is even a moment where something kind of fixes itself or moves weird and stuff like that. So I do believe that it is supposed to be kind of a magiciness.
Yeah, but it's one of those movies that just use time travel to tell an interesting character story. Because when it comes down to it, this is a father-son movie. Definitely a movie about dads and their sons, and about family, and definitely some Americana just dripping off the sleeves in this movie, which I enjoy. Not everybody's cup of tea, but I enjoy it.
Yeah, no, I totally see that. Because when I was a kid, I thought that I wanted it to be a little bit more of an action movie, but so I thought that it was a little boring. And then I remember seeing it in my mid-teens and going, hey, this is a lot better than I thought it was, and being a little bit more interested. But it's still been a long time. It just kind of flew under the radar in terms of movies. It wasn't a classic. It wasn't a cult classic. But at the same time, it did also end up spawning, strangely enough, a follow-up TV show, or a reboot TV show by the people who did the TV show Supernatural.
Yeah, I have not seen any of that show. I'm aware of it. And they swapped a couple of key things. But I never saw any of it. Did you see any of that?
I looked at some of it for this podcast, and it didn't appear particularly interesting or impressive. I don't think that it's a premise that lends itself very well to TV show format. I think that it is very much a movie one-off format.
Yeah.
Type of story. But
this is the kind of movie that... Yeah, especially this movie. This is the kind of movie that even a sequel wouldn't have made any sense. It just... Because it plays like it... we did Back to the Future already, and time travel is interesting because every movie tries to come up with its rules, and almost none of them really work. You just at the end of the day, you just have to establish this is how it works in this movie, and go with it. And I do think if you do that, and then you stick with it consistently, you just an audience will accept it and move on. And this movie does that well. It doesn't make any sense the rate things change at, and kind of how the future doesn't change until the past, the same moment. And it's if you try to get into the mechanics of this film, I think it's all right, but it doesn't matter to me because it's using time travel to tell a character story, and that it works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. Because as you'll find out as we watch this thing, it's nonsense.
Yeah,
it's complete and utter.
There's so many
nonsense.
paradoxes. It's just that wouldn't work.
Nope.
Too many
paradoxes, too many crazy things.
There's especially for the time, this is kind of a stacked cast. Dennis Quaid was doing well at this time. Little fun fact about Dennis Quaid: he was one of the stars in one of the first movies that Zach and I ever saw together, Vanishing Point. And
in fact, that's not just one of the first movies we ever saw together. That was the day we met.
was that the day we actually? I know it was the first theater movie we saw together, but
No, that was the day we met.
Are you sure? Because I thought the first time I met. Okay, so when
because
was
I drove with Dan, and Dan was like, "Yeah, my friend Brian's gonna be there. We'll go get coffee afterward." And I'm really curious to see you guys meet. You're a lot alike. Blah blah blah. Because I distinctly remember that because I just wanted to go see the movie, and I'm like, another person.
Because I remember, I remember that day, and I remember arguing in Starbucks. Well, not arguing. I remember talking about guns and talking about the Sig Sauer specifically in Vanishing Point. And then I remember getting into a Captain America versus Batman debate with you as far as who would win in the hand in like a
a brawl,
a martial contest. And so I think what I get mixed up in my memory, and we've been friends for well past a decade at this point, but the time when before Dan was about to get married, and he was living with your dad and you at that point, and I came over and you were playing Mass Effect 1, and I was like, somebody's playing Mass Effect, and I was so excited. And at that point, if we had met, we hadn't really become friends yet, because I remember it was still like, it's Zach.
That guy.
It's that guy. It's okay, that kid. I'm sorry, man. At the time, it was very true.
What's happening there is you're getting some streams crossed in terms of timeline, because Vanishing Point came out in 2008.
That was
the beginning of 2008. So Mass Effect had only been out for a year by then, and when I played Mass Effect on a friend's borrowed Xbox 360, it was while the second one was out, but not the third.
Dan and Aaron got married in 2009?
2009.
Okay, so it was okay. Yeah, I think it's because those are the two standout memories of kind of the beginning of us getting to know each other. Like, for some reason, those are the two that always in my mind are like, that was, well, and it was arguing, again, it wasn't arguing, it was just a fun, like, I love talking about that stuff.
Being a little, I was only like 17. You have to remember, that was 2007. You said over a decade? Sir,
it's 15.
In 2 years, that's going to be 20 years.
Stop it. I'm getting freaking old, man. Oh, man, I'll be 43 this year.
Yeah, I'm going to be, this is my Jesus year. I'm 33 right now. At the end of the year, I'm going to be 34. And I'm officially going to be in my mid-30s, and I'm not ready for that, man. I'm not ready to be in my mid-30s. I am a child.
But I just like...
I'm an immature man.
That's okay. I mean, it doesn't change much. I'm saying for me 10 years later. But I think, too, those two kind of, in a fun way, our whole relationship, like our whole friendship, is like fun nerd stuff, good conversations. Dan being such an important mutual friend for both of us. Mass Effect and comic book and Batman and Captain America. Firearms, like film. It's like all. I mean, those are still like core elements of like our friendship. So it's fun to me to think of those kind of two key early encounters that we had.
Yep. And for those of you who are catching how hesitant he is to say it was an argument, you need to understand, I was 17 years old. I was a little snot. I do remember Dan. Definitely an argument because I was being a douche.
I do remember Dan telling me, I mean, I know this, already know this. This isn't like some kind of, that Dan told me, I need somebody who can tell him he's wrong.
Yep.
Which, I was like, I can do that.
And well, you came across so kind of jockish at first because, you were had that kind of pseudo military swagger at first. I didn't think you were a nerd. I thought you were just another one of those guys who was going to tell me that I'm wrong because you could lift more. No. I was very biased back then. And so when we actually started talking and watched Vanishing Point, you knew about the guns. You knew we started talking about Batman and Star Trek and then Captain America and all that stuff. I was like, dang it, this is a functional nerd. This is a nerd that knows how to do practical things in addition to the nerdy stuff. This is what I want to be.
I have
and
tried.
So it was like,
and I mean, like, you're sorry, I totally cut you off there.
Yeah, no, that was pretty much it.
Because I've tried to be that. I love being comfortable if you put me out in the woods with no tech and just very primitive surroundings and let me enjoy getting away from all these things, I love it. I love history, and I love, family time, and I'm just, and then at the same time, I will happily sit down and debate the merits of different versions of the Enterprise for hours, and I love both those, and as I'm happy with that balance in my life, and I hope that my kids can find that too, because I do think that you can, as much as I love nerd stuff, you can take it too far, and as much as I love extreme, it's like anything. If you let it take over your life too much, it can become too much. I don't know, it's like a simple way of putting it, but it's, yeah. Go ahead.
My parents once grounded me from video games for like 3 months for exactly those problems. They once made me stop watching anything Star Wars related for exactly those problems. I might have a slight obsession issue.
Yeah. But getting back to the movie Frequency. Wow. This is like, we're doing an intro episode of like, get to know us. But if anybody sat through that and is going, are we going to talk about a movie? We are, and I'm sorry. But this podcast is ultimately about Zach and I getting to hang out. And we both like to reminisce. So I'm sorry, but I'm also not sorry.
Very true. So why don't we go ahead and start the movie, and we'll talk more about it as we go.
Yeah.
This
you want to give us a quick rundown?
Established. Rundown. We are not watching the rundown because it is not a science fiction or fantasy movie. Well, unless you're counting gun recoil. Frequency from the year 2000. It's rated PG-13. It is a cool 1 hour and 58 minutes long, so it's not quite 2 hours. Starring Dennis Quaid, Jim Caviezel, and everybody else, including Sean Doyle, Elizabeth Mitchell, one of my all-time favorites, Andre Bauer, and then miscellaneous other people.
Very, very young, was it Michael Pena or Pena? No.
Michael Pena?
No, Michael Cera.
Michael Cera.
Sorry.
Yes,
I apologize.
Those have a young and unknown Michael Cera.
Those
He's
are
not
very
among the top.
Different actors. I apologize.
Michael followed by very short last name. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you ready to go?
Yeah. As always, we encourage you guys to watch along with us, and we are going to hit that play button in 3, 2, 1, go.
Bang. So, Jim Caviezel is what's his face? Dennis Quaid's son. Do you think that's good casting?
I would call it fine, but it's not amazing. I love them both as actors, but they don't look like each other.
No, they really don't. And it doesn't even look like the mom, who she's in everything. Well, she always plays an annoying character too.
Yeah, she does. She also is quite younger than Jim Caviezel was at the time of filming, which was funny. Yeah, I think she was like 31, and Dennis Quaid was like in his 50s in this film. It's
or no, it was 30 and 47.
40. Okay, but yeah, I mean Elizabeth Mitchell, right? I think that's her name.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, see, I mostly think of her from Lost, but I know she's been in a lot of movies, and she was in The Expanse, along with Sean Doyle, who plays the villainous detective. Was also he was like a commander in the Earth Force, the United Nations Navy, right? Wasn't he? No. He was the other political person. That's right. Sorry.
I was gonna say, sir, you're sitting here talking about. Well, also funny enough, he was in a whole season of Star Trek Discovery, but that's a totally different thing there. But no, he was
big part of season 1. Right?
Ehrenreich. The big part of the whole thing. He was Sadavir Ehrenreich.
Did he?
He's like the villain of the whole series at the end of the day.
Maybe I remember
Everything in the first series is his fault.
Yeah, I remember him more from the first season. It's funny because I remember him and Avasarala together. But yeah, because Elizabeth Mitchell, she played the Reverend that went out to the ring. What, in season 3, I think, right?
Yeah, which I had a totally different picture in my head of who that is. When I listened to that book, I had just seen The Incredibles 2 and pictured her very much like the villain of The Incredibles 2. So to see this tall, beautiful blonde, I'm like, that's not her.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Noah Emmerich also, he's one of those actors who just pops up in a lot of stuff. He is, I believe, the brother of the either director or the writer of this movie, right?
Writer.
Writer.
He's the director of The Writer. The writer is a gentleman by the name of Toby Emmerich. Which I was trying to find out if he was at all related to Roland Emmerich. He's not, thank God, because it would actually take this movie an entire like number grade downward, because Roland Emmerich is cancer. That's mean. I don't like it.
Well, he's made two great films, one or two okay films, and then some really, really bad ones.
Unless he makes a sequel to one of those great films that actually makes that great film worse.
Yeah, I have avoided Independence Day Resurgence, and I'm gonna have to watch it one day when we get to it, and I'm already dreading it.
Independence Day Resurgence is one of the worst movies I have ever seen, and it is one of only 2 movies that I ever genuinely wanted to walk out of the theater, but I had somebody else with me, and I wasn't going to do that to them. Yeah. And they paid for me. Gotta be nice.
It's interesting too. For anybody who's listening, if I haven't mentioned this before, my son, who's quite young, he's about to turn 19, but he is going down the route of firefighting, and as a profession, he's living at a station, and I'm super proud of him. But it's interesting because I look at firefighting stuff a little bit different in films. I actually watched Backdraft with him a few weeks back, just for fun.
Oh, geez.
I mean, it's not an amazing
film. One of
film.
the single greatest action set pieces of all time, despite being an otherwise mediocre film.
Yeah, but it is one of the few big firefighter movies ever made. Although in recent years, there's been some good shows. Anyways, but it's funny this opening, because this movie, along with being time travel, obviously, firefighting is a massive part of Frank's character, the dad, and especially to the New York Fire Department, it's just one of those legendary, organizations, and a lot of, Americana mystique around it. And especially,
especially post 9/11.
Yeah, but after 9/11, which was just a year after this movie came out.
Yeah,
it was. This whole opening sequence, though, I feel like it's good because it's not overly actiony, but it is tense, and it does establish Frank's character pretty well. I mean, it establishes that he's a risk taker, but he's not like looking to get himself killed. He saves this guy, and I think in a scene it does establish who he is really well.
Yeah, because they're not stupid. They had a lot of firemen actually like on site. Most of the firemen extras are actual firemen for this movie. They tried really hard to get this right, which I admire. So yeah, it's over dramatic. It's a little bit goofy, but in places like this right here, he's running from the explosion, Terminator 2 style, and that is a very slow moving fireball.
Yeah. You get that nice, the manhole shot here, and yeah, the
equipment and everything. Oh, that's some rough CG right there.
You can just see that fireball just comped right on top of the image.
Yeah, like it's good that it's a real fireball, but yeah, just kind of comped in there. They just found a little extra. I do love a good practical explosion, though, and they actually blew up, not a full tanker, that was definitely a miniature, but I love that it was a nice little practical effect.
Here we definitely get into, the era, the 50s, not the 50s, this is, what's the 60s. Actual year? Like 68?
60s.
Okay. It was he's driving a, Harley, with his leather jacket.
1969.
Okay. It's what is he? This is Brooklyn or Queens, I think. This is Queens, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the love of baseball, and he's a firefighter. It's just this movie does not shy away at all from just the parts of this era that are cool. He's got a Dalmatian, as a puppy, and not to at all ignore that there were issues, obviously, during this era. Oh, right. If I just waited, they would have told me it was October 10th, 1969.
Oh my gosh, Brian.
I know. But I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff. I think that for all the problems that were very much, existed in this time of American history, there was also a lot of stuff that was worth celebrating. And I'm okay with it. For anybody that's listening that's like, Ew, why would you ever want to romanticize anything in the past?
Right? Because, there are things about the past that are worth romanticizing. There are things about the past that are terrible. Every era of history is
Yes.
terrible in its own way. People are going to look back on ours and go, what a bunch of maroons.
Yeah.
To quote Bugs Bunny. But they also have the things about them that make them nostalgic. They also have the things about them that make them special. And
sorry, you can see it
one of the
there.
reasons my parents like this so much.
Yeah. In that, as he was turning there, he has an earwig in, so he can hear this song being fed into his ear during this scene. Sorry, I went skimmed through the trivia. Yeah, so that he can follow along with Elvis.
Right. So it's funny. In recent years, given this is like a big father-son thing, one of the biggest stars in Hollywood right now, or not necessarily Hollywood, but like TV shows and the American entertainment ethos, is Dennis Quaid's son. You're familiar with Dennis Quaid's son, aren't you, Brian?
Loosely.
Well, he's mainly known for leading TV shows like The Boys and Star Trek Lower Decks. He's Brad Boimler.
Yeah, like I said, I know who he is. It's odd that because most of those I've seen little snippets of. I know that he's doing very well in the industry, as they say.
Dude, yeah, Jack Quaid. I mean, this guy, I'm surprised because I know that you're not a big fan of like modern interpretations of your favorite things, but this guy is literally the lead of a Star Trek show and the voice of Superman.
Yeah,
right now. Like,
that's right. He did this.
He does a great job. The My Adventures with Superman.
Yeah,
does a really good job. His appearance on Strange New Worlds was fantastic. There's a bunch of rumors that with The Boys ending and all that stuff, that maybe Star Trek wants to do something with him in live action.
Yeah, that was a fantastic episode. I will say, I've seen a handful of episodes of Lower Decks, and that episode was one of my favorites of Strange New Worlds.
Yeah. Oh, I have another episode you need to see then. But we're talking about this. Because if you notice, they're setting all this stuff up.
Oh, yeah.
He's got a slightly strained relationship with his wife, even though we also know it's very loving. He's a smoker, like everybody else in 1969.
Yep.
Which I just... gross.
Yeah. But this movie, it establishes its world and its characters early on. It doesn't... There's not a lot of left turns from characters in this movie, which I enjoy. Like, it just seems very like, this is how it goes. I mean, they're playing to stereotypes and archetypes for sure, but this movie it sticks with its premise. And I appreciate movies that just, you feel like the writer pays attention to what he already wrote as he moves forward. And I always appreciate that.
Yeah, very much agree. Again, this is a simple movie at the end of the day.
Oh, yeah.
Well, actually, no, that's a horrible way to put it because it's a confusing time travel movie. But it's an earnest movie.
Yes.
I think that's the best way to describe these things. It is an earnest movie. And it begins here in 1969. You have this really kind of CG, the double world transition. There's something about these aurora borealis, maybe a sunspot, stuff like that. And it's, I don't know. Earnest is the best word that I can.
No, that's
not something that's trying to be high-minded art, but it's also not trying to be cool.
Well, I think
it's not trying to be suave.
Yeah, I think earnest is a great word. I think the other one is it's just a genuine film. It's just really, it takes its themes at face value. It just goes with them. It lets its the idea of family and mistakes just be there. And it's not clever in a I want to be clever, I'm trying to trick my audience. It's just an unfolding tale of, okay, that would be weird. And I like movies that also aren't afraid to just like, no, let's let this end up where these characters are happy at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I like that. I mean, the fact that this movie has a more, cliched bow on it ending than the worst romantic comedy, right?
Yeah.
But the way that it gets there, you looking at all these characters, and I mean, right here, Jim Caviezel, and I love Jim Caviezel. He's
Look at the bad crop job on that photo.
well, the Photoshop was really in its infancy in 2000, but it's you want these characters to get their happy ending. You're like, oh, this is just, it's sad because again, for all we go back to I think that's where they really just embrace the Americana. Oh, I hate the fact he just throws down his gun like that out of its holster. Sorry. But you know what I mean? Like I think that it uses that vibe of, wasn't it amazing in the 60s? And again, this is a film, it's a fictional story. And so go with it and just accept that for these people, and that's the thing too, just to quickly get a little bit cultural, for as much as there was crap happening in American culture in the 60s, the civil rights movement, and a lot of stuff that needed to get fixed.
You made it sound like the civil rights movement was crap happening in the 60s.
No, sorry. There was a lot of crap happening. And it was a good thing.
The dawn of true drug culture.
Yeah. But there was also, for many, many people, this was a golden era of just family and sports and music and cars and as much as those, I think that's where, and you said this already, people act like, people act like, well, because of these other things, somehow the good memories other people have of this era shouldn't deserve to have them or something. It's like, that's not how it works. Because like you said, you can go to any era, any time in history, in any culture you want, and you'll find a mixture of things to be proud of and things to cringe at. And that's just humanity for you in a nutshell. So get over it. But, it's, I think that
Futurama said,
the movie paints the picture well in the past, where you want family to exist again. You want the family back together. You want these characters to find that spark of joy and love and togetherness that they portray in the late 60s. And you just, and it asks you just to go on that journey. And I appreciate that. And I'm here for it.
Mm-hmm.
I
I completely agree with you. I think that it is supposed to be a little bit of a commentary on kind of the nihilism. I think this is the director, I would say, kind of trying to address the fact that the 90s had entered into this era of nihilism. And there was a little bit more of that kind of atomic family hope structure, 50s, 60s, yada, yada, yada. And this is kind of his way of saying, like, oh man, if only we could go back to that. Or at least have that type of family structure. Because you can already see the future here that we see in the future, it's now 25 years in our past, is darker. The color is more leached from it. It's not quite sepia tone, but it's not nearly as bright and shiny. As,
it looks very much like the 90s, though. This looks like a 90s TV show in the way it's colored all of a sudden.
Yeah, that makes sense. And there's that young Michael Cera. I would not have caught that if you hadn't said it, and that is so weird.
Yeah. I mean, he went on to be in a few big movies.
Yeah, just slightly. Jim Caviezel as well. I believe that this is just before he was cast in the role of Jesus Christ for The Passion.
Yeah. Well, he had a run of a couple big films there. Yeah.
I was about to bring up a staple in my family, which was The Count of Monte Cristo.
Oh, yeah. That is.
You ever see that?
I genuinely like that movie. It's a running joke in my family, The Count of Monte Cristo, that my daughter does not remember seeing that film, and so we showed it to her again later in her life. And so every time it comes up, like, that movie we've seen twice, and she looks at us glaringly, and she says, "No, we've only seen it once." And it's just like a running joke in my family. But anyways, he did this. He was in a few other. He was in a movie Deja Vu with Denzel Washington, a Tony Scott film. And
was he in that one?
Yeah, he was the villain.
I only saw that movie once a long time ago. It wasn't really my thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's not amazing, but no, he was the villain of that film. And and then, of course, after Passion of the Christ, in Person of Interest, which he was just phenomenal in, along with Michael Emerson. Was that his name?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, I mean, because he was big off of
bug-eyed actor who was just great in everything.
Yeah, well, he came off Lost, being huge, and then that was his next show. And Jonathan Nolan, wrote and produced that show, and man, it's just good stuff.
Jonathan Nolan, brother of the famed Christopher Nolan.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. That TV show there is actually a TV show that was created and directed by the director of this movie.
That's
which
right.
I realized I did not talk about the director of this movie Gregory Hoblit, not Gregory Hobbit, Hoblit, who has what I would describe as a stunningly average career. Directed a lot of TV, directed a couple of movies, and never really had anything that was a big smash hit or took off. But he did direct people like, Dennis Quaid here, and he had another movie with Bruce Willis, and he even directed the movie Fracture, which had Anthony Hopkins and Ryan Gosling.
Oh my gosh!
So he had
I forgot all about the movie. This is also, I think, I'm not sure how to put this, I guess, but this is the kind of film that streaming kind of killed, because theaters have become kind of just either big things or very small budget stuff, and kind of the mid tier has kind of moved into Netflix and Hulu and Amazon and those.
I was gonna say, I don't know if it necessarily killed this type of movie so much as just banished it into obscurity.
Yeah,
because now there's so many that are just like this that you're just like, oh, did you know that there was this Hulu movie that was like this? Former A-list actor who's now kind of a B-list actor who does something kind of cool. Oh, I might check that out someday.
Yeah,
you never do.
Well, because this was one of those films that just an original idea, not based on IP. Given a bigger budget than an indie film, obviously, but not some big blockbuster. And, it was a moderate success. I mean, I remember seeing this in the theaters, and this was a random, for me, I just went and saw it. I do love they got Brian Green, young and old, in the TVs across. It's just fun. But I remember, this was one of those movies that I was out of high school that summer, and I mean, I graduated in 2000. And it was just it's,
wow.
it's a weekend, and was there anything good in the movie theater? And it was like, oh, there's this random time travel, something about like a father and son. Yeah, let's go see that. I mean, it literally was that for me. And then going to the theater and with a group of buddies, like, oh, that was actually kind of interesting. So
yeah. I don't remember if my dad saw it in theaters, but I know that he really liked this movie. So I saw it several times as a kid because he just was in love with it.
So here we do have this to me is super effective as we kind of get the unfolding of them talking, because the movie, it does a good job of like the first couple seconds of the conversation. They're not showing you Dennis Quaid's face. They're kind of, I mean, it's them, but it keeps it just a little bit vague. I think they're trying to give you a little bit of the character's point of view of they're not being entirely sure, but the way it's focusing on his hand with the cigarette and that kind of stuff. And I mean, it's like there's a little artistic work here, at least an attempt to, to do that. And it's just asking you to just follow along, because it only takes a minute or two for you to be like, oh, okay, they're talking to each other through time. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, I personally believe that I remember seeing that because I remember it was pointed out to me. I don't remember if it was by my dad. I know that I watched this once with Dan at one point, but I remember it being pointed out and somebody saying something along the lines of, I bet that there's a cut of this film where that was actually kind of the beginning. We never saw the beginning, or they had it cut differently to where it was supposed to be like a big shocking reveal that, oh, he's talking to his dad from the past. And that was actually like the introduction of the character.
I'm glad that they established the family first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's
yeah,
but I just yeah, man, they're just they lean on the theme so hard of just like baseball and his son, and they got their dog, and it just they unabashedly just lean into these tropes so hard. But I think, like you said, there's an earnestness about it that just makes it work.
And you see this kind of structured life that he's got, and then you juxtapose that to the unstructured, the unstructured life of the son in the future. And there's that kind of, I don't know.
Well, yeah,
I like the differences that they show. Like, for example, you have the lowered lighting of the future, but when he's actually on the device, there's a different, more yellow light that comes out of the ham radio that gives him a closer lighting to the past light. Yeah. Oh, Andre Bauer. I love Andre Bauer much.
Yeah, rest in peace.
Passed away last year or year before last.
Yeah, he's such a comedic genius too, and it's funny because this movie is a total straight role for him.
Well, I only ever really saw him in straight roles. I didn't even know he had comedy chops until I watched Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
He's so
I remember
funny.
him from Glory.
Oh man,
yeah, Glory was the one that I saw him in.
An earnest movie.
I don't know if earnest is the right word. Like, it's just dang.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible movie.
Yeah. But yeah, he's one of those, he's such a versatile actor, and I'm glad that he got, be on a hit show, but he's just one of those character actors that just every time he popped up, just like, yep, he's going to be solid. And as much as he had a very successful, solid career, he should have been bigger even than he was.
Oh, very much so. Absolutely incredible actor. He was actually on this TV show from the 90s. Crap, I can't remember the name of it.
That transition, I will say, I mean, it's a cool transition of just the photo, kind of the negative print. It's a simple transition, but it also just this amazing, the gathering of family and kids and just, again, Americana to just death. And talk about, again, just the future versus the past.
And using him in both those scenes and taking him with like dark hair and makeup to cover his lines and then adding a little bit of lines with makeup and lightening the hair. It works, especially since, a lot of black people age really, really well. You can believe that he doesn't look all that changed. Andre Bauer. Oh, it was called Homicide: Life on the Streets. It was like a 5-season TV show from the mid-90s that you can't find anywhere. You have to find it on old DVD or VHS releases because it has so much licensed music in it that no production company cares to release this mostly forgotten 90s TV show. And have to pay that much money for like hit 90s songs.
I missed that the first 2 or 3 times I watched this movie, and I don't know why, because it's not even trying to hide it, but that they show you the killer right there.
Mm-hmm.
I remember it was I went through a phase earlier in my life where I actually really enjoyed like crime procedurals, your CSIs, your Bones, your NCISs, all those kind of shows.
Oh, how terrible. How stupid of a thing to enjoy.
No, I mean, yeah.
I realized I was in school for forensic science for 3 years because I loved CSI so much.
And I don't mean it in a derogatory way. And they definitely have their place, and there's some fun things. But it was definitely a running joke anytime we watched those, my wife and I, with so they always show you the killer, in the first third of the film. It's such a recurring trope. It's just like, yeah, they got to show you the killer, pretty quickly if you're paying attention.
My wife hates it when I do stuff like that because I'm always looking for those clues also. Sends me a bunch of memes about living with somebody with ADHD. And they're like, she's like, look, it's you. And I'm like, shut up. I like predicting things.
So here, Elizabeth Mitchell.
Trophy cues.
Yeah. But you have Elizabeth Mitchell here in old lady makeup. She's actually like, what,
it's
5?
Good too.
Yeah, it's not bad. But that she
was 30 years old when she filmed this.
Yeah, and Jim Caviezel was older than her.
31.
It's just a year. I always thought it was funny. Yeah, they did a decent job. She does a good job too of just her energy, kind of moving around. She's not moving too fast. Just kind of.
Her posture is very different too.
Yeah, it seems like because she would be what, early 60s at this point in the story.
Yeah, she would be 60 if they keep with her regular age.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that her makeup is exceptional. I honestly. If you showed me her right now, I would not sit there and think that is a 30-year-old woman in old person makeup.
Yeah. Oh, no, they did a good job. It just always, it's funny to me whenever I know, like, oh, yeah, they're exactly the same age or very, very close. So, but she also is.
Hot take here, though.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I was just going to say, I think it's a good mom-father scene. It's just her reminiscing and telling you about the dad, being dead. And, it's just, this movie, it's very efficient. It doesn't. waste a lot of time. It moves through its story briskly, but it also, whenever it pauses to give you character moments, it makes sense because this whole movie's about these people. It's about these characters. So what were you going to say, then?
I don't remember what I was going to say.
Oh,
But
I'm sorry.
I have a little bit of a hot take.
Go for it.
I don't think Jim Caviezel's a very good actor. He's an actor in a way that
I have a comparison, but I'm curious what you're going to say.
Cage is an actor, almost.
Oh, I wouldn't make that comparison, but go ahead.
No. Well, Nicolas Cage can be amazing. I've seen him in so many things where he's fantastic. Oh, sorry. You know what's a better comparison? Is Keanu Reeves.
You stole that.
They're both low energy.
You stole that right through the microphone. I was waiting to be like, no, the better comparison is Keanu Reeves. To me, he is. Well, they're both. They do a type of character very, very well, and they're also very physical actors. I've always heard that Keanu Reeves is not an actor where you just give his face. If you give him his whole body, he's giving a performance with everything. That's why he does so much of his own stunt work. Jim Caviezel's similar. When you pan back and you let him move, he's very good. But he's not the kind of actor where you just like give me his face for like 2 or 3 minutes and give him a monologue and just watch in amazement as he just, becomes a different person. Kind of guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, very much so. There was a time, and I'm really glad that this didn't happen because thinking back on it, I'm like, physically, yes, but in terms of acting skill, he just wouldn't have been quite right. But for a long time, I was holding onto the idea that Jim Caviezel should have been cast as Doctor Strange. Because he has an intensity to his face. He has the right look for Doctor Strange. But he doesn't quite have the right acting for the version of Doctor Strange that the Marvel Cinematic Universe today would want.
He does have an intensity, though, about, when Jim Caviezel is locked in on something, he's very good at it. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's similar to Keanu, right? I mean, that's why he works as John Wick. It's just like that focused, okay, this is what I've got to do. He does this. I mean, again, and he played, what was it? John Reese was his character's name in Point of Interest. And he was so good at that.
No, John Reese was the character from that Punisher-esque Chris Pratt show.
I'm pretty sure it's Mr. Reese.
Maybe. Oh, no, that was James Reese. Okay, yeah, James Reese and John Reese. You're right.
Yeah, I was about to say, I'm pretty sure John Reese. But yeah, it's he does this role well. As much as he physically doesn't look like Dennis Quaid, he does, just that I'm kind of depressed and don't care, and I'm just angsty. But at the same time, once he figures out what's going on, and he kind of locks in and like, we've got to make this happen, I think he's very effective in this role. This was also just a very effective scene of like burning the desk. So right there, they've established how it works in this movie. They just showed you because they watched, like you literally got to see Jim Caviezel watch that burn mark come in. And so the idea that like, if it was really trying to even, remotely follow what should have happened, it should have just been there. But the fact that it literally like the transition happened while he was staring at it establishes a really important part of how time travel works in this film. And not even time travel, how time changes affect that. It's almost like it skips in a way, or like, somehow only takes effect when they're both aware of it at the same time. Yeah. Yeah. And so I just, again, it's simple, but it establishes this is how we're doing it. And you just, you either roll with it or you don't, but that's the way it is in this film.
Yeah. I remember thinking to myself as I was researching it and watching the very few retrospectives out there, because it's a mostly forgotten movie these days. Like how quickly he comes to the conclusion that he's talking back through time, how quickly he comes to believe it. That's one of those things that I feel in a lot of other movies would have taken a lot longer to get there. There would be a lot more disbelief, and I think that the disbelief would have actually come on the side of the more angsty future person, and not on the bright, shiny past person, but you almost need it to happen that way due to the whole like um burning thing,
Yeah. Well, I think that again, the movie just asks. I think it's asking you to go with it at the same speed the characters are going with it, and there's by having an event happen like that, you do a couple things. You do here's something that would give the character evidence immediately that something happened. It's telling the audience this is how it's going to work, and they do get it that where he immediately even tells his best friend. There's no like thought of him keeping this a secret or like, am I crazy? Like he's just like, no, I'm gonna tell my friend. And the dad's the one who's a little bit more, kind of keeping it to himself. Like this is he accepts it, but he's even here, like the way he's kind of standing back, not joining in on the game, like kind of watching like this. I mean, they do a good job of he's mulling over this, and he's not telling anybody about it.
It was also that baseball thing,
Yeah, because
he gave him that baseball score.
Yeah, and then here going into this fire. I mean, after of course the coincidence of him getting to. But this is a movie where you don't care about coincidences because this whole movie is built on them.
Well, exactly. You hit it on the head. The whole movie is built on coincidence because the kind of idea is that this isn't something that's happening by chance. There's some force somewhere in existence that is trying to fix the wrongs that have happened here. It's trying to get this family back together. That's why I think this fits more as a fantasy than a science fiction, even though it involves such time travel. There's this aspect of escaping fate and the chance to escape it outside of coincidence.
Yeah, you could almost, I think in an interesting way, even though they don't ever reference this in the film, I think you could almost consider this like a spiritual fantasy.
I could see that, which would fit for both Dennis Quaid and Jim Caviezel's styles.
Yeah.
In recent years, time of recording, Jim Caviezel, Dennis Quaid has become a lot more involved in spiritual movies, Christian or near Christian, you could describe.
Yeah. I think Caviezel's been involved in those for a while now.
It's almost like he had a really weird spiritual experience on the set of a movie or something like that.
Yep. Yeah, he's
told
the story.
What that could have been.
Yeah, told the story a few times, but yeah. This whole sequence, though, I really think this is a well done, well executed sequence because I mean, there's when you structure it where the audience already kind of knows what's going to happen, but is still like waiting to, okay, so how is this really going to play out? Is he really going to do it? How's it going to happen? When that's done well, I like it when the movie telegraphs a little bit and it's kind of like asking the audience, like, we've already told you, but you're still going to want to see how this actually unfolds.
Yeah. Because it's one of those things where you kind of know what's going to happen, but you don't necessarily know the method by which it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's where good storytelling tends to get you, because if it happens just as you think it's going to happen, it's like, okay, good, cool. But if it happens to where you get the same result that you expect, but not in the way that you expect, like, ooh, what if there's a little twist to it? What if they do something differently? Then stuff becomes more interesting. Stuff becomes a little bit more chaotic. Well, and this movie doesn't necessarily do that, but it still creates room for the question to exist. How's this going to happen?
Yeah. Well, and I think it's also, that is part of something else I also think is just important in this film, which when you set up good, like set up and payoff, like you set up the emotional stakes, like, oh, they connected, and here's his dad, and you're going to die, and but I warned you, and they've clearly made it, known that Dennis Quaid, hurt him, and so it's like, kind of the setup for like stakes, and the movie fulfills those stakes fairly quickly, but in a way that's satisfactory, and you're, again, if you accept the premise of the film, you'll go with. And when a movie can take the audience on that roller coaster of like setup and then payoff, and then setup and then payoff multiple times in a row, and on an emotional level where it's about people, that's so effective to get people to just want to stay connected to the story.
Mm-hmm. Which I think is where this movie excels, because I think it does that really well. It has this constantly evolving narrative. Like I said, this is not a simple movie. I wanted to describe it that way, but it's not.
It's a simple premise, but
it's
it
so
tells
complicated.
Yeah.
Because it goes through all of these things where one setup and one payoff, one setup, one payoff, one setup, one payoff, but the payoffs aren't necessarily what you expect them to be. And yeah, I think it's great in that way.
Yeah. I like them going back and forth. I think they have this really well done. I mean, the fire effects, like this whole sequence is, it's not low budget. Like this is, I was just mentioning, I saw Backdraft recently for the first time in like 15 years, and its set pieces were very high end for the day. This movie's set pieces for fire are, this is well done. Like this is not some cheap television budget that they or I mean, not that this was a super expensive movie, but they did a good job. That's what I'm trying to say. But
yes,
going back and forth between his dad here and then them very casually sitting around, kind of telling stories and talk. It's just tonally, they're doing a good job. Like it's a balancing act here. And when the transition happens, I mean, it's a little, the whole dropped glass cliche, but it's good. Because you're rooting for his dad here. I mean, firefighters are pretty easy thing to root for, and you kind of know that he's going to make it somehow, but you don't know exactly what. And then he's actually finds the woman, and I don't know. It's a good hero moment for his dad also, which I appreciate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, firefighter is one of those things where it's like it's hard to criticize that job. It's hard not to see the heroicism in it, or it's hard to criticize the job. Sorry, because cops are a very hot topic right now. Have been for the last 15 years, right? People used to really root for cops. Doctors are becoming a little bit more hated in certain communities, whether because of people don't trust them, being part of some sort of predatory system, or they're too arrogant and vain, or yada, yada, yada. One reason or another, their heroism is a little bit less than it used to be.
That's a good shot right there. Sorry, just the lighting of the eyes. I totally understand. I want to say that this movie was done with care. I just want to say, I appreciate that you could have just phoned this in, and you can tell the people involved were trying.
Yeah.
Continue, please.
More
Sorry.
so than you know. Well, my point was literally that it's hard not to root for firefighters because firefighters' reputations are still, for the most part, intact in the modern age.
Well, there's not a whole lot that they can do that's controversial, I guess.
Yeah.
People are going to die in a fire unless they go get them.
Mm-hmm. But this movie was done with a lot of care. Did you read about the director's reason for wanting to direct it when it had passed through the hands of several big directors and been rejected?
I probably did, but I do not remember at the moment. Although I do want to quickly say, do you remember this scene? Did you read about this scene? The story had him drop his hat, and Dennis Quaid actually got a decent head injury filming this stunt that he would not have gotten if he had his helmet on.
That is correct. He had a nice big gash across his head, had to get 30 some odd stitches. Ouchie, ouchie.
Yeah. I mean, and this is you have the music going, the slow-mo hat, the flashbacks. I mean, there's a lot of editing juggling happening in this sequence. But I think if you're paying attention, you can follow what's happening pretty well. And it's good.
And I'm not usually the biggest fan of these type of scenes, especially with an overabundance of slow motion. But it's well done.
I think Zack Snyder has made this seem so tame by modern standards that we will accept it a little bit easier.
Oh, even before Zack Snyder, I was a little bit skeptical of a lot of slow mo. But I think that the thing about this is that it gives you time to absorb what's happening, because I think that it would be really confusing with the whole time travel shenanigans to kind of be just oh, it's supposed to be him growing up with his father. You're getting that, right?
Yeah.
Because not everybody's going to. So you need to take that time. You need to take that moment to really indulge in the montage.
Yeah.
Yeah. But going back to it, the director, his father had actually passed away about a year before he made this movie. And so when he got this script, he kind of fell in love with it for that reason. And I think that he put a lot of care into it because it's kind of a tribute to his father.
It's funny. I don't remember reading that. I probably did because I went through the whole IMDb page for this and I somehow missed that. But that's good though. I mean, the people making films should care beyond just this is a job.
Mhm.
Although
Well, I mean, you just brought up Zack Snyder, and Zack Snyder, most famous for Justice League and Man of Steel and stuff like that. These days, one of the big things for him was the fact that his daughter died during filming, and Warner Brothers didn't want to wait for him to come back, so they just kind of fired him and replaced him.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the reasons why he wanted to go back and finish it so badly and spent a whole bunch of his own money to do so. Is because he saw it as a tribute to his daughter.
It's also interesting that and they literally say this out loud here when they start talking on the radio in a minute, but that John remembers kind of both versions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of those things that that has classic time travel shenanigans written over it, but also again one of those reasons why I maintain that it is not a logical time travel system.
No, it really isn't.
It's not a scientific time travel system.
No. I do think that, we were talking about Jim Caviezel's acting. I do think that this scene in particular, though, does a really good job as he's just kind of sitting there just trying to make all this work in his head and, kind of when he's laughing but shaking his head and kind of like not sure. And it's just a good little moment for him, I thought.
Yeah. Well, again, he's not a terrible actor, but his style is odd.
Yeah. Well, I would say he's perfectly fine. He's perfectly serviceable. And in the right role, he's actually really good. But he, when you think of like just the amazing dramatic actors, when you think of your, in his prime Robert De Niro kind of, guys is one of my go-tos for like just a powerhouse of an actor, especially back in the 70s and 80s. He's not that for sure. But he also, I think he's somebody though that he's trying. If you listen to him in interviews, he cares about his craft. He really wants to do a good job. And I think that also shows through the work ethic is there. Like Keanu is actually similar. Keanu is, renowned for his work ethic. And it definitely helps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very true. Very true. I don't know a lot about Jim Caviezel behind the scenes. I always liked him and stuff, I always felt like he was really good in The Count of Monte Cristo as the Count of Monte Cristo, but really not that great as Edmond Dantes.
Yeah, he's a little flat, but I think that movie I just like because again that's like kind of a childhood movie for me that I just loved, and I thought the payoff was just so epic in that film. I
really fantastic.
I love the payoff.
Actually, even a little bit better than the book, to be honest. I really like the book, but it meanders. It takes too long. Though it is really convenient that in The Count of Monte Cristo, like he learns his lesson about forgiveness after he kills everybody.
It's the best time to learn it.
Exactly.
You just don't. You don't have to be. You don't have any like angst about what to do because you've already taken care of it.
Exactly.
I think so. He's coming in here because he the time difference is interesting because like his dad, they already showed him trying to get a hold of him, and then him not being able to get a hold of him. I kind of appreciate that they didn't let that be immediately the next scene. That they kind of let this breathe a tiny bit. That he gets to go home and have that moment with his son on the bicycle and. It's kind of, having that moment of like, I shouldn't have gotten this. Like this is, and I think that it's, again, here's how this time travel works. This makes me think now of, what's that time travel film with Bruce Willis, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt?
12 Monkeys?
No.
Oh,
Looper. With the on the arm, the scarring on the arm that's happening like in real time as he's doing it. But
this is kind of Looper rules, isn't it?
It is a little bit Looper rules. But I was gonna say, I appreciate that the characters in this film immediately show an understanding of, for lack of better terms, kind of the gift that they're being given by these circumstances.
Yeah. He's not giving him lottery numbers.
No, and like there's not even like a joke about that, really, is there? I mean, like he's literally giving him sports like information. Talk about Back to the Future. It's like here's who's gonna win tomorrow, and here's exactly the score. I mean, I think it's in a certain type of film, you couldn't have helped but make that joke. And this movie just has no interest in that because it's all about them.
Yeah, maybe it's just like don't pull a Biff Tannen on that. A what? You'll get it in a few years.
Yeah. And then I think too here, John like accepting this. Sorry, just like John's acceptance at a level here where like, really, this is. I don't know. I just there's again his look in his eye in that scene right there. Just it's I think the first bit of like joy you've seen in Jim Caviezel's face.
Yeah. No, this is one of the things that Jim Caviezel has always done well, and I think one of the reasons why he got the role of Jesus shortly after this. Not that this role contributed to that at all, but he does genuine emotion very well. It's not always reflective in his voice because he just has kind of a flat voice. But his face always gives off the emotion that he's supposed to in a way that's very believable to me, or at least appropriate for the movie. Is the way that I would describe it.
I also love here too. He's describing this in very like plain terms. It's like a dream. I'm not really sure, and the fact that his dad's first reaction is, just that. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't. He's like worried about his son over the radio, and it's their interaction is just. It's straightforward and it's believable in a. These aren't like super sophisticated people. I don't mean that like in a bad way, but these are kind of simple, salty of people reacting to this extraordinary circumstance in a way that's believable to the type of people they've been presented as being.
Yeah, they're not philosophers. Well, they're not philosophers. They're not physicists. Who's going to be sitting there going, "Oh, well, it must be this occurrence that is happening because of this thing that is going on."
Yeah. And just immediately hear the dad just wants to know about his son, And there's no like, well, you shouldn't know about.
Dad, so
well,
it seems more like your type of thing.
What I was gonna say, there's none of this like, well, you don't want to know about the future because you'll mess it. I mean, like, they don't even touch that. It's just a dad would be like, hey, so like, what happened in your life? And the son's like, well, yeah, and this happened and this happened, and they just get into a genuine conversation here, and it just bypasses all the normal. And don't get me wrong, in a lot of films, that kind of conversation about the consequences and being careful and you don't want to change. This movie has no interest in avoiding changing. This movie is all about let's change things for the better. We have an opportunity here to try to make our lives better and let's take advantage of it. And most time travel movies are, if they're interested in changing things, it's much more about fixing things so that you didn't screw it up. That's typically the plot of a time travel story, whether it's a movie or television. And this movie's the opposite of it, where it's like there's no like, well, we really shouldn't mess with things, and things happen for a reason, and maybe we made it worse. And like no, it's like, nope, this is father and son. I want my dad to still be alive, and we're gonna in a little bit we're gonna transition to saving mom, and maybe you can help me with this case that I'm on, and that's it.
Yeah. No, and I really like that. It's not pretentious about the time travel. It is very much just like, this is something that's happening, so let's see what we can do with it, which I think most people would, but there's a nobility to it because it's about saving lives. It's about catching killers, and they're not trying to stop JFK from being assassinated, even though that already happened, just using a general example.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I think that the stakes being so small and so personal when dealing with a concept as big as time travel is really good. Because even like time travel kids movies and stuff like that, there's this general aspect of stakes, like, oh, it's the whole of reality, it's the whole of history, millions of people's lives being affected in X, Y, and Z way, Biff Tannen.
Oh,
but
that shot right there. Sorry, I just of the two of them.
Mm.
It's just
Very
it's
good
it's a
shot.
simple but very effective shot. Sorry, go ahead.
Very much agree. Yeah, that I mean that's pretty much what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
Just rambling on about
Well, and there's
salt of the earth people, as you
Yeah.
phrase it.
well, and there's I think that you need to have both. You need to have well, not that you need to have both. There's room for both. There's room to have genre storytelling that is focused on people and just relationships and kind of just the human condition where people act as they really do. And then you have stories that are designed to explore ideas and just these lofty ideas of like, well, how would that work? And what would we do? And, stakes and all that stuff. And it's,
Yelling Murph at a bookcase.
yeah, you can do both and you can enjoy both. And it's not it doesn't always have to be the same thing.
Yeah. Because you know that this is one of those movies that somebody will be like, oh, time travel movies. And they'll be like, oh, Frequency. What an absolute morons movie. It's like, no, this is the working man, salt of the earth time travel movie. Both
Yeah.
in tone and character, but also in concept.
Yeah,
You're already seeing that hopefulness
Yeah.
return to him.
Yeah. I mean, and even, it's just it's being lit just a little bit differently. He's acting differently. It's just little subtle things. His house is already like a little more put together than it was last time.
Yeah.
Also, I appreciate a movie that very unabashedly shows that an intact family is good for human beings. It just a healthy intact family is something that genuinely makes everybody in it better. And not that people can't persevere and still work out well if circumstances, kind of screw them over, but it doesn't mean that we should like try to sabotage those things, because man, there is some genuine benefit to having these things in your life. It doesn't have to be exactly like this, but this movie just it doesn't apologize for that, and I appreciate that, because I was blessed to have a strong family and mom and dad who did their best, made mistakes, but did their best, and I'm very grateful for that, and I'm assuming you feel similar. And this movie, the fact that John would have this is an interesting little twist, but I was saying John is better almost instantly having that longer history with both of his mom and his dad around. Even at this point, where his dad has died 10 years earlier at this point in the story. But that made such a difference, having his dad that much longer.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
here we get the kind of the second act twist, right?
Yeah. Because then you don't know what this means yet, but you will. Dun dun dun.
I think I had that clock. It's interesting here too that, again, the way that like changes unravel makes no sense, other than just the movie needs things to flow and in an order that the audience can. Because if you tried to do all this at once, if you try to introduce dad survived, but mom didn't, and it all happened at once, I'm trying to think of how would you convey that? How would you have that scene of his dad, escaping out of the fire and surviving, and his mom not being dead, and do that in a way the audience would follow it and get the payoff of his dad surviving without just immediately kicking it out because his mom is now dead? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That'd be hard.
Yeah, because essentially they're kind of establishing it as the timeline needs to settle and solidify, and that things will move in accordance with the 1960s, and the time actually needs to be passed in order to change the future, which is an interesting way of doing things, but it helps to keep things, as you said, streamlined.
Yeah, I think this is one of those plot decisions that exists more for the audience's benefit than for any kind of this makes sense.
Wholeheartedly agree. Yeah,
because he even called his mom in in the scene just before this, at least a scene in 1999 where it was still her message. So like literally a day before she was alive. Even though she died 30 years, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all.
Well, she hadn't died yet because the changes hadn't uploaded.
It hadn't uploaded. Yeah, it had to buffer. But I think too, that's part of the fun, that you can still appreciate this movie while pointing out, these just like, all right, that doesn't really make sense. But
yeah.
Okay.
Very much so.
And even the fact that the people around him are all, that they also, when he was at the bar, here, I mean, you have the girl that he was, I guess they were living together, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what's implied. And, yeah.
This reminds me of that scene, which was also in a library, I think, where in, what's that movie? It's a Wonderful Life,
Yeah.
where he goes to find his not wife, and he goes to the library because she's like a spinster librarian.
Yeah.
And she's like, I don't know who you are.
Well, a library is a wonderful place to stage an awkward conversation, because it's already an inherently awkward place to have a conversation, and then to say this is also an awkward conversation. It's just and everybody's aware of it, so it just kind of, it's like a shortcut to the emotional stakes of a scene.
Yeah, I can see that.
And he looks grumpy.
Yeah,
He's just like,
very grumpy.
My life is not great anymore.
He's like, for one moment, I thought I was gonna have a happy. No more happy.
Oh man, another rough night. And
which implies that he's known for having rough nights.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's efficient storytelling. You immediately know. Yeah, he's comes in late often. He drinks a lot, and at this point now, everybody's like, yeah, both your parents have been dead. Your mom was murdered. Your dad died of cancer 10 years ago. We get it, but it's been 10 years, so everybody's kind of out of patience and sympathy with giving him that room. But then also, of course, handing him the lead that then gets him back into his mom's case, and yeah.
Mm-hmm. Good old Nightingale murder.
Yeah. Although that a skeleton that old would not still have all the fingers intact. I read that too.
No, they wouldn't. They never do. Skeletons in movies are hilarious. For those of you who don't know, skeletons fall apart.
Yes.
So anytime
no ligaments
you see
holding them
something, anytime you see a movie or a video game or something where there is a skeleton that is hanging from something and it's like whole, then it's wrong. Skeletons fall apart after the ligaments go away. They don't magically hold together in any way, shape, or form.
Becomes a pile.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Becomes a pile of sticks.
Yep.
Otherwise referred to as firewood.
Yeah, the movie, it really does. It's interesting that they kind of go. I mean, the lighting changes totally come back. By the way, as he goes into his house, and it's so dark versus this is so yellow and bright.
Yeah.
Here, but man, they just swing back and forth hard. Of like, I saved my dad. Oh, mom's dead. Like, it does not pull any punches when it comes to just the emotional stakes that's swinging left and right.
Yeah, because when they blah, 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 blah. When Dad survived, his house changes. You pointed it out. It's cleaner. It's more whole looking. It's brighter. And then when Mom dies, then suddenly it's back and it actually looks worse than it had before.
Yeah.
And I do like that consistency in a movie fraught with inconsistency.
Yeah. I do think they, as much as it might be like, very easy, low-hanging fruit emotionally, it also does make sense. What else could they have done that would have gotten his dad super invested all of a sudden?
Yeah.
because they were reminiscing, they were talking, but as far as like what would get his dad like fired up to get like, okay, I gotta go, I gotta take care of this, like there's threatening his wife, as they've already established their relationship as being, just he loves his wife very much, and that there's a real relationship there, that it does make sense that you immediately are going to buy how invested John, not John, Jack. No, what am I? Yeah,
that is great.
That's great. Wow, I'm just totally. What is wrong with my brain? Anyways, it's effective in that just it works, because you would not have any doubt, given what the movie's shown you, that his dad would not be 110% in immediately once he was told what was about to happen.
Yeah, and having that idea of like the butterfly effect is really on show in this movie, with like, how is it that his survival led to this serial killer killing 10 women?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although, man, this would be a fun way to like, because they're doing a little bit of procedural stuff here, a little bit just kind of cop work, and but getting to do it with the premise that they have here is just fun, because
see, that's why I think that they turned this premise into a TV show. It's just that for some reason they didn't make it a procedural; they made it a like ongoing drama about a girl trying to get her father back.
Yeah. It's a good line.
It is. It's very, what's the word? Convicting.
Yeah, it is like, if we do nothing, sure. Well, he even says it. Saving mom would be easy. Like if they just wanted to save their mom's life, that actually would be very straightforward and easy.
He's just like, let's make her go away. He knows the date of death.
Yeah,
he can keep her away from that, right?
Yeah, but we would then have to live with the fact that we knew something horrible was happening, that we could have done something about, and chose not to. And for most good people, they would ruin your life almost as much, right?
With great power, one might say, there must also come great responsibility.
There is.
Satadhir Ehrenreich. Which, odd that they use, and that's Satadhir Ehrenreich being the name of the character, for that we know. Our beloved Doors and Corners origin story, The Expanse.
Yes.
Yeah. Sean Doyle as Jack Shepherd. Because they have Frank Sullivan, John Sullivan, Jack Shepherd, Julia Sullivan,
Frank,
and then Satch de Leon is Andres Power's character name. Satch de Leon. That's a choice.
Somebody wrote that down and said that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Man.
This makes me want a beer. I'm not even a beer guy, but this makes me want a beer.
Well, there's just the old school. We're just gonna sit in the bar and hang out, and it's like one of the few times where you see a happily married guy sit down and flirt with some girls, and you're not getting immediately going like, ooh, what are you doing? Because no, he's here trying to save her life. It's okay.
Yeah, he's investigating. Now you see, if you're sitting there and you're doing a TV show with this premise, right? Imagine that you have an episode where you have the married man and he's trying to save the girl who's going to get murdered, but you realize that she's out on a mission, you could say. And his only way to get her out of the situation is to be kind of technically cheating on his wife, not necessarily going full sex or something like that, but it'd be like there's a plot for you. There's an episode, add in a moral dilemma of do I cheat on my wife to save this girl's life because I have knowledge from the future? And try explaining that to your wife. Honey, I did a good thing.
Interesting little, just the transition there again of just that quickly, that things happened right away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he went there and his presence dissuaded the killer.
Yep. Well, and it makes sense, the targets of opportunity, especially when you find out later on that this is a cop. It's, makes sense that he would, he's not going to press his luck. He's not going to, he's looking for easy targets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he is. And again, you're dealing with an era where cops were very liked and respected.
Yeah, and basically could do whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
They had a long leash back then.
Too long, some might say.
Oh, there are definitely examples where it was. No arguing that. As much as I love and respect police officers, I think I've said this in other podcasts. Yep. They should be held to a higher standard. I fully believe that too. But I love that this scene. It's just they give you, and I think this is good. The movie doesn't just drown you in the darkness. It always finds moments like this where it gives you just a little bit of like, he gets to smile for a second. It's like, here's his mom. Here he's like picturing himself, but you can imagine, like, I could totally see him picturing this era of his life, remembering what it was like back then. And it just gives you this little spark before it kind of gets back to death and murder.
Exactly. Well, it's important, and this is something that actually I've realized in watching some movies recently, is that they don't often remind you of the stakes, or they won't show you the stakes. The stakes, the reason that people are doing things, will very often be in dialogue, and I think that there is. I mean, it's a proven thing that show don't tell is more satisfying. Yeah. And this is them showing why they are doing what they're doing. Because you're going to sit there and go, these people have access to a mechanism of cross-time communication. Yeah. Oh my goodness. What are they going to do with it? Save their family.
Yeah. Earlier when we were talking about how this didn't want to go, Biff Tannen, I forgot about this for a second there. It's funny that he thinks about telling Gordo the secret to like riches and wealth in the future, and doesn't give it to his dad. And I think that says something so powerful in a subtle way, that he didn't need it, but he also wanted to bless his best friend. And it just Yahoo.
It's also so very of the time. Oh, yeah. With it being Yahoo and not Google.
Yeah, not Google or Apple. Because,
well, Google is a little bit more of a like Google and Yahoo I think would work better than Apple, because Apple's kind of like a word that everybody knows, but Google and Yahoo is a little bit.
Those are words that were like invented almost when they came out.
Yeah. So I think that because Yahoo at this time, they were the big search engine.
Oh yeah.
Chat and everything like that.
I used Google them a lot.
Hadn't really started up.
Oh, yeah, it was Netscape Navigator and Yahoo. So I remember those.
Yeah, because Yahoo, actually, Google offered Yahoo like, "Hey, will you buy us out?" And they're like, "No, you're not worth it." And then Yahoo stock and value just plummeted over the years to where they were sold to, I want to say, AT&T for like a pittance.
Yeah,
they're
one of those great cautionary tales of the fragility of the tech industry.
Hubris.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's
See, this movie does feel like a TV show in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah.
Because movies have to be so careful with their runtime. This movie just kind of meanders a lot. It's just like, oh, here's a nice little scene of him getting out of a car.
Well, this is a movie that
opening sequence just kind of has him sitting around for a minute, even during an intense firefighting thing.
Well, they absolutely could have made this movie, I think, an hour and 40 minutes. But you can definitely tell this was like, there was like the studio managed like, under 2 hours, because it had such a thing with film. That 2 hour mark is kind of a big deal, especially back then. Is a big deal. But it uses, it fills out its time, to kind of just give you little character moments, make the movie breathe a little bit, give it, just some space. But at the same time, it never, I feel like, the movie slows down. It has moments where it's a little bit slower, but it never drags. I feel like it does avoid that particular problem, even though it does definitely slow down here or there.
Yeah, I very much agree. I don't think that it ever drags. I think that it's a very complicated movie when you really think about it. Well, I mean, I've said that several times now. It is a really complicated movie. But its runtime allows it to keep going so that it doesn't drag. It constantly does move on from one interesting thing to the next, and like this is the point in the movie where it's going to risk dragging.
Yeah.
And so what do? They're gonna throw in another twist in the very
Yeah.
near future.
And they also give it a setting that I would think was smartly. It's not just another bar. They give it another setting that is, energetic. Where he's, he's in a club this time, and it's just that in itself gives it a little bit. You get this interrogation scene, and this guy very much. I mean, and this is a total trope of procedurals where you have somebody who makes perfect sense as the perpetrator. But it's not him because, of course, it's never the first guy they bring into the interrogation room ever. But it does because from here on, the movie this is the beginning, kind of the third act. It kind of starts ramping up here. You get, the confrontation between his dad and the killer. Then you start getting, John getting more, on it, and the fingerprints coming through, and the energy starts ramping up. I mean, so this is, it does a good job of not that it's nonstop from here on out, but it kind of maintains its energy, I think, from here on out.
Yeah. And then something I would like to point out is that so many movies and TV shows, when they're going back in time to the 60s, they will always have women in those kind of like baggy dresses, like fashionable muumuus almost.
Yeah.
With the beehive hairdo, doing that specific dance.
It's
where they're like swimming with their arms.
It's very
and
recognizable.
Is there one key reference video out there of women in the 60s doing that everybody's just like, ah, yes, the 60s encapsulated in muumuu dancing? It's this weird thing that I notice every single time when they want to show off it's the 60s.
Oh, yeah. This is, oh my gosh. Sorry, this is definitely over the top. Just the whole, I'm unloading my gun and putting it on the table. Just like, nope. All right.
Like that's unhinged behavior. You probably need to take a break now, have a breather.
John, you got a minute? You might want to leave. This is too, I mean, late 90s cop work. This is a little indicative of just, cop dramas at the time, where cops are allowed to do this, and the only consequence is, a little, you probably shouldn't do that from their superior, and that's it.
Yeah. Less Law and Order, a little bit more NYPD Blue.
Yes.
Which I was never allowed to watch, which is why I snuck watching some episodes, and I found it kind of lame.
It was a telegraph punch if I've ever seen one, but considering he wasn't expecting it at all, I guess it works.
Sucker punch.
Yeah.
But yeah, this guy, it's so funny that I never really put it together that this was him. Even when I was researching and watching some of it and all that stuff, that was Aaron Wright from The Expanse and a gentleman by the name of Tarka from season 4 of Star Trek Discovery, which was one of its better seasons. Not that says much.
Oh, man. This was the fact that he barely escaped getting killed right here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What happened to you, man? I don't know. I feel like this bathroom is almost too clean for being in a club.
Well, the floor is definitely too clean.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Dear.
I also, I'm not sure if appreciate's the right word, but the fact that even though his dad's, hero firefighter, that he kind of gets his ass kicked right there.
Firefighters are strong. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're trained to deal with like hand to hand. I mean, they're trained in self-defense.
Yeah. But I mean, just as a character that he's a hero character, and he just he gets one good hit in, but that's it. And I'm glad he should
have shot first.
I'm glad that the movie just it didn't over trope it, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, that reminds me of something. I mean, we're Star Wars fans for the most part. Solo, right?
Yeah.
Um, the actor in Solo, what was his name? Alden Ehrenreich.
Mm. Oh yeah,
Alden
yeah, yeah,
Ehrenreich,
yeah.
who
Who
plays
played?
Solo.
Yeah,
He looks so much more like a young Dennis Quaid than a young Harrison Ford.
you can see that.
Like, there are certain scenes in that movie. You go watch that movie, and damn,
Mm.
like, he looks just like him. He looks more like him than his own son, in my humble opinion.
Yeah. This is sufficiently just the music and the lighting and just kind of that. Oh, man, there is also just killing not just women, but nurses, and doing it in a sexual, just it is properly disturbing.
Yeah, I was gonna say, to me, it is unnerving. It's gross, but it's also believable, in my opinion. Nurses are so fetishized. You have the whole sexy nurse thing that you can find at Spirit Halloween and every fetish store in the world. It's a thing, the naughty nurse. And so you get why you would have a villain who would do this, who's like, oh, I'm gonna focus on this thing, because a lot of serial killers tend to be like very, very sexually motivated.
Yeah.
And sexual repression and X, Y, and Z, sadossexualism and things like that. So it's very similar to prostitute murders, or not just because they're the less dead, but with, I don't know, long time to say what I already said.
Yeah.
I understand why they would pick that trope, because it fits with a kind of realistic depiction of how fetishism would work in the mind of a broken human being. This was cool.
Yeah, this was cool. I mean, again, it doesn't work scientifically. The fingerprints would have been gone after 30 years. But I get I love that it's, again, you get to kind of have a moment where John gets to have a great idea, and they get to find, out of this tragedy of, they weren't able to save a woman, that she's dead, and they say it. You can't go back. You can't, despite this ability we have, you can't undo this. And but they get this little moment of like, oh, we got an idea. And again, given the rules they've established in this movie, this would work. And even the little music cues here are just great.
And I also this particular scene, as well as certain other movies, made me obsessed with wanting to have secret hiding spots with like loose floorboards. But I never lived in a house that had floorboards. So I never got any loose floorboards. And I remember being quite young and actually being legitimately sad that I didn't get to have any secret loose floorboards. Which my dad not later, but when I mentioned that, watching it when I was younger, but not as young as the first couple times I saw it, he's just like, we'll be glad, because with loose floorboards also comes squeaky floorboards, and we'd be able to hear you trying to sneak around. Which they knew I was anyway, apparently.
I just was thinking, I know, just again of like weird connections. Oh, the villain's name is Jack Shephard. Elizabeth Mitchell was famous in Lost, whose main character's name was Jack Shephard. Anyways.
Okay, I knew that sounded familiar. Yeah. My brain was going to Mass Effect.
Yeah,
Shepard.
It is also in Mass Effect, but Jack Shephard is Matthew Fox's character in Lost. But the other interesting, this is not necessarily related to this scene, sorry, but some of the little weird 9/11 connections. Frank, his firefighter number is 343, which is the exact number of firefighters who died at 9/11.
Oh,
Just one of those
I thought you were going to
oddball.
make a Halo thing.
No, they're a little more of a somber, but just one of those odd connections I was reading about on IMDb that, yeah, that the exact number of firefighters who died in 9/11, and then also there's in his there was one other connection where it was like basically had all of the flight numbers in a longer number. It might have been part of the radio, but there's some weird coincidences that link, not link, that's not accurate. There's a total coincidences that just line up with certain facts from 9/11, which is just one of those little odd coincidences in history that do exist.
I think part of it is the fact that the World Trade Center is actually depicted in the 1960s here, even though it wasn't actually done until the 1970s.
Mm.
I remember seeing something about that.
I also know that all of the baseball facts and scores in this movie are accurate. Like, they don't make them up. Like, this is actually
Yes.
the 1969 World Series. This happened. Like, even like the shoe polish play and all that stuff. Like, that all is completely true to what actually happened in that series. They didn't have to make up the drama for this film.
And they even have it on the correct dates and everything like that. I wonder what came first, the chicken or the egg on those dates.
Yeah, if they found a world, they knew they wanted to do baseball and found a year that was kind of just a fun.
Yeah. Well, I think they wanted the 60s, and then they were just like, "Hey, would be a fun one there."
Another example here of makeup done well. The makeup in this movie generally is very good.
Isn't it? Yeah. Because again, I would look at this guy and go, "Ah, yes, that's getting it in the high def. There's a little bit of a matteness to the skin that gives away that it's makeup, but excellent."
Yeah, but
Excellent work
adding just enough to the cheeks and just the wrinkles and the eyes. Yeah, it's good. It's interesting too to kind of the first impression of this guy. This is the first time you're seeing him in the future, and that he seems just so kind of docile here and just not. You just saw him in the bathroom and the fight and then the results of what he did, and then here it's just you kind of see this just this sad old man sitting in a bar, and it's an interesting way to introduce him here. I mean, obviously he's still a threat, but he definitely doesn't appear threatening here.
Yeah.
I
don't know. I think he's like that this is him, or you should anyway, because they look like the same person. But I don't know. I think that he's got this kind of creepy vibe. He's
creepy.
He doesn't blink. I don't know.
I think it was just. Oh yeah, no, I'm not. Again, I don't mean a criticism. Just interesting that when they first sitting there, he's just just a guy sitting in a bar in the middle of the day smoking. Just not really anything else to do in his life. It was just that little. Yeah. I think that's more of just the setting, and just that he wasn't expecting anything. He's just. I almost wonder, like, because I'm trying to think in this film story, how long has it been since the last time he killed anybody? And so, if you haven't been caught, like, what would you be doing at this point in your life? If you're just like, well, I killed all these, I got to totally run my serial killer fantasy, and nobody ever caught me, and I'm just sitting here retired. Like, what am I supposed to do? I mean, it's a weird little side plot, I guess.
Weirdly enough, like I have some knowledge of that.
Okay, hit me.
A lot of people don't know this, but I met my wife because of a serial killer. Technically, two serial killers. Because she was studying psychology, and there was this game, Two Truths and a Lie, where you tell two truths and a lie, and people have to guess which is the lie. And one of the things I said is that I had met two serial killers before they had been caught. And so she asks me, she's like, hey, because she chatted me online, and she's just like, okay, I need to know if that one's the truth or the lie, and if it's the truth, if it's one of the truths, you need to tell me which ones, because she was studying serial killers. I was just like, yes, that is true. I met two serial killers before they were caught, which would be a gentleman by the name of Israel Keys, who I was briefly married to his cousin, and gentleman, I forget his first name, D'Angelo, better known as the Golden State Killer. And the Golden State Killer was retired, and I met him because he came through a whole bunch of Starbucks on the I-80 corridor, and I worked at every single Starbucks on the 80 corridor for a 5-year period. And I remember him specifically in the Elm Store Starbucks in Auburn, and he spent his retirement motorcycling up and down Highway 80 and hanging out with other old guys and all this other stuff because he never got caught and he just got too old to continue doing what he was doing. And he spent his retirement hanging out and getting mad at tow truck people.
Weird.
Mm-hmm. So that was a long story.
Yeah.
You guys now get a little glimpse into
You've had an interesting life.
weird things. I have, but I feel like a boring person.
This interesting twist here too. I mean, I think it's not like surprising that his dad was set up, but this is where I think the real twist comes from, that they use that to damage the radio and kind of create this whole extra bit of drama, and that John doesn't have like any ability to do anything here, and whew, there he goes.
And they even take away his ability to speak,
Yeah.
The falling of the baseball is definitely supposed to symbolize something, but I don't know, it seems just kind of arbitrary, like, they're baseball people.
Yeah, I think it's just, I think they just honestly wanted something falling in both, just to juxtapose something's falling. But, I mean,
Yeah.
high-tech shoes. Sorry, that's definitely a late 90s thing.
I'm not familiar with that reference.
Oh, that's right. It was a big brand in the late 90s. But,
Yeah.
I love the look on his face as Frank's trying to tell him, you're accused of murder. And so I'm going to tell you that a cop did it. My son from the future told me. And just are you serious right now? Like, the fact that I'm even giving you a chance to keep telling me this story is only because we're friends.
He's like, we're friends. I'm trying to help you. And this is what you're giving me?
Yeah. Like, what do you expect me to do with this?
This is what I need to defend?
Oh, man. Yeah, this is... Oh, man. It's just one of those fun... He does the just annoyed friend so well, just like, I'm just pissed right now. Probably the most swearing you hear in the entire movie right there also. It's just not... It's actually a pretty clean film for the most part. But
yeah, I think that's one of the reasons that my parents liked it so much.
Yeah. I mean,
for those of you who didn't know, I am a pastor's son. And he was also law enforcement, but he didn't buy into all of the cussing and things like that. And he would keep his R-rated movies in a different cabinet that closed because he didn't want people from the church coming over and seeing that he had R-rated movies.
If my wife ever hears this, I'm sorry. She does the same thing with there are certain things that we make sure, if many of you from the church are, because my wife's a worship leader at our church, and any alcohol has to be in like closed cabinets where nobody will accidentally see it, comes from the church and thinks, oh no, they did.
Church people cause problems, man.
Oh, they really do. But anyways,
especially since so many of them are old people.
Yeah.
Talkative old people.
They really do. But I think this is a good scene. No, and again, we were talking about the World Series. Everything he just described there about the shoe polish play, and all that happened. It's the kind of thing that you think would be invented. It wasn't. And baseball, yeah. I'm not a huge sports guy, but I do like baseball because it has so many kind of just odd, funny, one-off stories like that of just like the sport is full of weird coincidences and crazy plays that actually did happen.
Baseball's one of those things where some people sit there and they call baseball really boring, which led to the entire Futurama sport of Blurnsball. And the fact is, it is kind of boring.
Yeah.
It's kind of boring to watch, especially on TV. And then, but in person, when you're there, you're at a game, because I don't like watching sports on TV. I find it really boring. And you could just kind of see the production surrounding it because, they're big entertainment production things, right? But when you're there in person, it's amazing. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And I think that the chief among that is baseball, because it doesn't move so fast that you have to be paying attention every single second of every single thing. You're able to do stuff. You're able to hang out, talk with people, get a hot dog, eat a popsicle, whatever.
Yeah.
But you still get to enjoy the competition and the skill involved. Whereas something, like football, you have a total of 13 to 14 minutes of actual gameplay, or something like basketball, where you have to be watching this ball going back and forth at breakneck speed. Or even worse, lacrosse.
Oh, goodness. Yeah. The little ball to keep track of. So I appreciate this, though, too, that, again, the cop is an interesting mixture of giving him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, but still being skeptical. This movie's already established that its characters are kind of open, nobody's reacting like, well, that's crazy and not even possible. Okay, this is the fact that
he did just give that yelling, screaming speech of
he did, but then he immediately went out and started talking to his wife and, this,
this is good. This is where it's best.
Yeah.
I love
no cameras back then.
Hero-villain confrontations.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Shoot me in the...
Yeah.
Although, I've always hated snub-nosed revolvers. It's just...
Because you feel like they would be really inaccurate?
Well, they would be really inaccurate. That's the thing.
Well, go watch some videos testing that. They're harder to aim.
Yeah.
But if you know how to aim,
a
3-inch barrel on something like a 38 special like that is just as accurate as a 6-inch barrel.
Yes, but a human being is not nearly as accurate with them. That's the big difference. If you put them in a vise and you shoot them under super controlled circumstances, yes, they drop off as negligible. But the human factor in them makes them much less. You can feel the difference just handing an untrained person a run-of-the-mill Glock with a 4-inch barrel, and then handing them with a 911 with a 5-inch barrel, and between the trigger and the extra length and the weight and everything, the average person will be, much more accurate. So it does matter, even though both those guns are on paper within a fraction of a percentage point apart. You're right, but I also stand by the fact that they're just bad backups, and they're overly cliched in films. I just don't like them.
I get where you're coming from, but I actually I saw some really interesting videos on what type of backup guns you would want to carry. And this one dude, really old, grizzled, combat vet, former detective, all this stuff. And he's just like, oh yeah, I have an ankle carry and everything like that, and I always have he carried a 6-hour, but he was just like, backup always got to be a revolver. Because a backup is usually when somebody's going to be pressing right up against you. Mm-hmm. Maybe you're struggling, you're fighting, and if you have a gun with a slide and you press that right up against somebody, that slide could go back a 1/4 of an inch and it won't fire. But a revolver will always fire.
Yeah. Oh no, you're not wrong. Revolvers definitely have their place.
I just have a huge respect for snub-nosed revolvers. I think they're kind of fun. And I just want to argue with you.
No, that's fine. This is an interesting. They're giving. It's funny. I'm like, you notice things differently about a film. I think when you watch it in this setting, where we're trying to be extra observant and talk about it, even though we're talking about other things at the same time. This is a drawn out scene. They really take the time. This has been 3 or 4 minutes now that they're letting the conversation happen. Also, too, they're not going to John at all in the future. Most of these scenes find ways to cut back and forth, and this one is entirely staying in the past. Yeah. And
I think you need to.
Yeah, but taking the time to show what he's doing and kind of showing the setup and having the conversation between these two, and that there's a reason why the murderer can't just run right back in. He's kind of got to let it simmer back down, and the game's happening. There's just this is a scene that is taking its time.
Yeah. And imagine if this guy found out about the time travel. Okay.
Yeah, he's like, wait a minute.
Imagine wait, the universe is trying to conspire to get me killed and ruin my hobby. His hobby being killing people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always loved this. I remember as a kid, I was confused as to what was going on because I was only like 9 years old. But seeing it older, I was just like, oh, dude, this is really cool. As Andre Bauer figures out, Satch, figures out what's going on. And okay, I don't know if that would work with that type of electrocution.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't know enough to know for sure. I mean, I appreciate the fact that they genuinely showed he had to have the full circuit of electricity, like to the wall, back down. He had to have his hand on the door handle, having the liquid to get in. I mean, now depending on the kind of shoes he was wearing, that's the only thing that really is the big question mark there. But it wasn't. I think a lesser film would have literally just, had him plug in like a wire and just tag him with it when he walked through the door and nothing. The fact that they gave him a more elaborate setup, I appreciated. Also, the fact that as a firefighter, he would have had an understanding of just how, electricity works and how it can start fires and that kind of thing. And, it gives him a tiny bit of a hero moment without having him like all of a sudden, beat up the cop. You got to show him have a little ingenuity.
It also had that moment of him sitting there with that shit-eating grin that Dennis Quaid is just
He's very
good at.
Yeah,
Did you ever see
the cigarette.
Movie Undercover? Did you ever see the movie Undercover Blues?
I don't think so.
That is a kind of action comedy from the 90s that I grew up on, which I'm shocked that I grew up on because my parents were really weird about like some movies we weren't allowed to watch and some movies we were. And that's one of those movies I'm like, they let us watch that? But Dennis Quaid and Stanley Tucci. And Dennis Quaid plays a spy. And he's trying to uncover this whole thing. And he's with his wife, who's the actress name I can't think of. It's not Laura Dern. But she reminds me of Laura Dern for some reason. And he's a spy who's retired and has a brand new baby. And his wife's a spy. And they get caught up in this international thing. And they're just trying to be retired and happy. And then there's this wild card of Stanley Tucci as a gangster named Muerte, who Dennis Quaid disarms early in the movie, so he swears like a blood debt against him, and he's like chasing him down for the rest of the movie and just showing up at inopportune times and getting his butt kicked by Dennis Quaid. And it's hilarious. And my family still quotes it all the time, and you should watch it.
Interesting. Well, I was thinking
haven't seen it in like 15 years, so it might be terrible.
One thing I was going to say, you don't see, and part of this, I think, is just him as an actor doesn't want to. He doesn't play villains very often, but he has the face that he could play villain.
Oh my God. I remember my mom sitting there, like, when Heath Ledger got announced as the Joker. She was like, no, they should get Dennis Quaid. He'd be able to act more like Jack Nicholson. Because but she's like, he's got the smile. He's got the mouth.
And it turned into...
By the way, have you seen the new Wicked movie?
I have not.
There's an actor in there that I want to see in Joker makeup. Just to see. There's just something about it.
No, that is one of those films that I and it's weird because I love old musicals. I was raised on them, but I just have no interest in musicals. I want to have a moment
of musicals, man.
No, I was just going to say I want to appreciate the fact that he reloaded right there. The cop did.
Okay, he did reload. All right.
Yeah, I was
counting the shots.
Yeah, he does shoot one more than he should here, but the fact that they had him reload at all is still like such a win in movies, especially movies back here, because man, movies back then would just have to shoot 30 times out of a 6-shot revolver.
Well, I mean, isn't that like what our original conversation 20 years ago started about?
Yeah, it was definitely one of it.
The shot capacity of a Sig Sauer SP 2022 in Vantage Point because he fires 15 shots.
Yep.
And or 16 shots out of a 15-round magazine, but you're like,
you
Secret
had one in the
Service,
barrel.
he would put one in the pipe.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, it's only a 13-round magazine, because I was getting it confused with a Beretta,
Oh,
because I didn't know enough, and you actually did. And I was just vain.
Oh, and what's funny is that I don't remember the details as much about that as you do, but I just remember the conclusions and that Dan was so happy that I was able to shut you up a little bit. Oh, it's just
I deserve
good.
it. I deserve it.
Good times. You know, at times we all deserve it, buddy. I've definitely had those moments myself where you're like, man, I was an idiot.
That's just most of my childhood memories at this point.
I appreciate that they like escalated this to a fight, that it wasn't like him just like walking away.
Yeah. And I always found it a little weird. Like, how did he get underneath it? How was he able to reach up and like know that it was going to be that fragile? But at the same time, I absolutely love it, because what this does is it creates a fight. It creates a contest that's an even playing field, and it's just a little different, you know? Because there are so many movies where it's just like, oh, they're fighting and rolling around on the ground. Now it's an underwater set piece, and it's special. It's different.
It does. Well, this movie does a good job of almost never repeating a setting or a scene. It finds little ways to not like just like here's its thing, and it just does it several times over. Where it's like even the confrontations. You have the really quiet bar, and then you have the big exciting club, and then you have the fight in the bathroom, and then the fight here. The shootout's very brief, which shootouts and chases do not last for a long time typically. I mean, every now and then there's examples they do, but it keeps the variety up.
Yeah, it does.
And then I mean the movie just very quickly transitions here to the end. Because again, we have this is by far the longest stretch we've gone without seeing John in the future.
Yeah.
But like seeing him there, like asleep, kind of, they get to glance at him, and then they have this, and then we go back to the first time and the only time you see John in peril in this whole movie coming up shortly.
That is kind of interesting that he's not really like like you said, in peril. Even though you kind of expect the younger party to be a little bit more in that than the older party.
Yeah. Yeah, they definitely gave Dennis Quaid the majority of the action beats in this film. I mean, to be fair, Dennis Quaid in 2000, which was a much bigger star. Jim Caviezel was, he was known,
an up and comer,
but not anywhere near Dennis Quaid's level.
No, Jim Caviezel didn't become a household name until Jesus.
Yeah. Until
the Passion.
Yeah.
Which supposedly he's going to be returning to that role, and they're going to be using some pretty hefty digital de-aging on him. And I don't know about that. I feel like The Passion is one of those movies that shouldn't get a sequel.
You don't touch that movie. I mean, I've heard the arguments from him and behind the scenes, like interviews, like, well, of course it needs a sequel. Like, no, it doesn't. It really doesn't.
It's just like, because do people need to know what happened to Jesus after? Like,
I'm pretty sure that story.
I mean, they
do,
known. But
yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right.
I don't really understand how it can be turned into a narrative that will translate well and respectfully onto screen.
There's something genuinely powerful about seeing death, and from a theological point of view, there's something very powerful about that. I think that it's I've no desire to see that sequel, even though obviously it's personally very important to me, that story. And you as
like
well.
You make a sequel, like a spiritual sequel, but
oh gosh.
And you make it about Paul.
Yeah.
And use Jim Caviezel digitally de-aged for the Road to Damascus scene or something,
Yeah.
Create the Mel Gibson Bible shared universe. Let's go.
John,
that is entirely a joke, by the way. I am
you're not advocating
to see a Mel Gibson shared universe.
Okay, the camera work right there. It's just that immediate, like, somebody's in the house.
Mm-hmm. Dun, dun.
Why is it? Oh, and the fact that, again, the changes haven't caught up yet.
Yeah.
And, oh, man. There's something about it's such a simple camera trick, but just that like the shaky run up that just immediately tells anybody that's watching it like this is the point of view of somebody running, you know?
Yeah, and it's freaky.
Yep. But then I do think that they get you a little bit here that having it happen simultaneously in both houses is effective because I don't think you expected. I think that you at this point you expected, oh, Frank's fine now. Now it's John's turn. And the fact that they make this happen in both.
Twist.
Yeah. One last little although
One less of a problem.
The idea here that that he's gonna like handcuff this guy with the kid in the house and go up and like mess with his mom is just like, oh, this guy needs to die.
Oh yeah, this is one of those great. If you have something to say, go for it. I
was just gonna say there is something anybody who's been in a long-term relationship knows, that simple touch where she's like her eyes shoot open. You can tell when you know, because there's just subtle little things where you would know instantly. You know instantly this is not my husband.
Like I can identify the cats by which one jumps on the bed. You know, in the pitch black, you would know your person.
Oh man.
But I just remember it being brought up to me by other people, like remembering creepy cop villains, you know, or creepy like cop movie bad guys, and he was brought up several times in that conversation.
Johnny. So about the Saint Johnny also. I mean, granted, there's been a lot of movies with that name being said creepily, but
here's Johnny. Oh yeah, that's right. This thing.
Yeah,
I forgot about the hand.
The hand, yeah. The hand. Well, and they had it earlier when they were unpacking his dad's stuff, where they had his shotgun. So I mean, even back in that early scene, they established his dad's old shotgun.
Yeah, because Michael Cera was playing with it.
Yep.
Oh, it's like a literal Chekhov's gun.
There you go. We were talking about that. Oh yeah, for Serenity, we were talking about you need Chekhov's gun.
Chekhov's nerve cluster. They need Chekhov's nerve cluster.
Although there's nobody depressing the mic, so you wouldn't have actually heard that, but it's okay.
It's magic.
It's okay. Man, right here. Oh, what a...
The special effects here is pretty good.
What did I say? It very much looks Mummy to me, which was the same era.
I was going to say. Yeah, this was the year after the Mummy, so I genuinely wouldn't be surprised if there was like some, hey, can we use some of your software? You know? In this kind of ripple. Wow, my house looks way better than it did.
Yeah. Oh, and then having Frank back. With the shotgun again.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that he didn't go flying backwards from a shotgun, like that trope.
Oh, yeah. That one gets me these days. I was actually watching something the other day where somebody got shot. Tropic Thunder. Oh, God. But that makes sense for them to do that.
Yeah.
Stuff like The Punisher. Remember when Thomas Jane shoots the two guys with the 911s?
Yeah,
and they just fly backward.
Yeah. I will say, we've been complimenting the makeup. I don't think Dennis Quaid's makeup's amazing here.
No, I don't think so either. I was just looking at that.
For some reason, they did not nail him the same way they got Mom.
They're just like, we only need it for the one shot.
Yeah.
I mean, they do this whole extra shot thing here.
Well, and I think this is where I don't mind this, because, I mean, you could have ended the movie right there. The movie, I mean, everybody would have gotten it, great. But I like this little... It's just like just a post sequence, I guess, the best way to put it. Just this.
It's an epilogue.
It is, yeah, an epilogue. That's perfect. And it's okay. This movie was all about getting to this. Like, the movie's entire purpose was arriving at this moment. And you got Mom there, and Dad, and the kids, and they get the sappy American music going. And I think this is actually a Garth Brooks song. I think they play here. They start up here in a minute.
I wouldn't know. I hate country music.
It's okay, but to me, like, but they for late 90s. I mean, that was Americana in the late 90s. So the Yahoo license plate. And it's just
the Benz, because he was talking about his crappy car at the beginning.
Yep. Yeah. It works because I know I just said this, so I want to say it again. The movie's entire, this is the point right here. This epilogue is the entire point for the story. And so it would almost be, I couldn't imagine this movie without this. And the fact they're playing baseball, and it is this is almost like a rom-com ending, but it works for this movie.
Yeah. Like, I feel like it would have been a lot better. Well, one, if Jim Caviezel wore longer shorts, but also just like without the music. I love the old man run, though. I think that he nailed the old man run.
Yeah.
You
think if they had gone for just a less like music video-esque montage here?
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, like I kind of feel like this is when it goes a little too far for me. This is when it gets into like Cheese Whiz.
Yeah,
is them going into like their memories and everything like that.
Yeah, if they kept it at just the ball field here, I think they could have been very effective. I mean, I don't mind the music.
It is effective. But, I do. I hate country music. If you like country music, you're wrong.
Well, we can talk about that later. It's interesting.
Part of it's just growing up in a country music environment.
Yeah,
everybody's like country music, cowboys, and I'm like, go to hell. Give me my Star Trek.
It's okay. Oh man, sorry. I know that like so many people would cringe, but the idea of like taking your son on a motorcycle ride, just having him sit in front of you, just hanging out, I'm okay with it.
I've never ridden a motorcycle, and I don't have a son, so I don't know.
There is such a thing as overprotecting your kids. Doesn't mean that we should be like, giving them live electrical wires to play with. But I think that,
Oh, hey, it just auto-played Person of Interest for me.
It wanted to play Jurassic World for me. I was like, interesting choice, but it's okay.
But yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that like there are some people who would look at that and go, "Oh my God, why would they possibly show a child in such danger like that?" And motorcycles are dangerous.
Yeah.
But I am one of these people. This is a conversation my wife and I just very recently had, because I know that she's going to be a fairly anxious, overprotective parent in some way, and she also identifies that, but also as a marriage and family therapist. She can tell that that's not a good thing for the kid. The anxiety of the parent will often be passed on to the child. So she's just like, are you going to be anxious about things? And I'm like, dude, my nieces and nephews, like, you think of Blake and Judah, you were around for some of that time, and I would just be throwing them around like they were footballs, and they loved it.
Yeah.
Talking with Dan, he got to watch his brother raise his kids and be like, there's a lot of anxiety about them being safe, and oh no, they're going to get hurt if they do something like that. And every now and again, you just have to go, good. Kids need to get hurt sometimes.
They need to have the experiences.
My parents let me fall down the stairs when I was being stupid because my mom said, if you do that, you're going to fall down the stairs. And I did, and I learned a lesson.
Experience is a powerful lesson giver. But so
teacher?
Lesson teacher, yes. Yeah, so I this is one of those movies that when I hold this up as some kind of a great achievement of the genre, no. This is just a solid character-driven movie about people that you don't have to feel any kind of reservation about cheering on, and just father and son, mom and friend, and just it's a feel good movie. It's got enough of the fun genre tropes to just add a little extra spice to an otherwise pretty straightforward procedural / family drama. And it came out of that time where I was transitioning into adulthood, and it has that kind of that late 90s early 2000s vibe to it, which I'm nostalgic for because that was my teenage years. And it's a movie that I wouldn't hold it against anybody that didn't enjoy it, but I also would defend my love for it wholeheartedly. So
Yeah, very nostalgic seeing it again, understanding a little bit more of what was going on in some of the circumstances, and yeah, I think that it is the perfect like adaptation of like a dime store might be the wrong way to put it, but it feels like in terms of pacing and length and conclusion and everything, this feels like a novel that you're going to buy at the grocery store or the airport to read
man.
because you know that you're going to have to wait for like 8 hours on a flight or something like that. And you know that it's not going to be anything world changing, but you're like, that was fun. It sucked me in.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff doesn't really make sense about the science, but the characters were good and the conclusion was satisfying.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to make movies that are like genuinely kind of satisfying with characters that you want to root for. It's so rare these days.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is what I want. It's small. It's simple.
So I'm looking here at the Amazon, like description where they give you like the time, the year, and its IMDb rating and all that, and then its tag words on Amazon are drama, science fiction, cerebral, and gentle. I just saw that. I'm like, gentle. All right. I mean, I don't disagree. I don't think I've ever seen that as like a keyword for a film before, but I also don't disagree. It's just it's an earnest, gentle, genuine, heart on its sleeve film. And it's funny that you and I have had this moment twice now. This particular recording. Well, as you were describing the paperback novel you pick up at the airport, I was literally thinking before you started saying that, like, I'm going to describe this as that paperback novel you pick up to pass the time that you finish and you go, that was pretty good. I enjoyed reading that. It was a good way to pass the time.
Yeah. That's just how I feel about it. I think that it's a fitting description. But your description of it as as an almost like family good times movie, like, you're right, but at the same time, there's
It's not
oddly large amount of brutal murders and sexual assault.
Yeah. Oh,
like,
I mean, it's like a murder. I mean, he like literally deals with both of his parents dying. One of them with like raped and murdered, and it's so, for being this like heartfelt, like, oh, we're gonna end it like on this baseball diamond, and everybody's happy, and it's like also weirdly dark. But like I said earlier, this movie really is solid at build up and payoff and build up and payoff. It does it in a very straightforward way with its premise firmly established, but it also just arrives where it needs to be and doesn't apologize for it. It just yeah. It was in the best way. I think this is one of the best examples of a non-pretentious genre film. And I love a lot of.
I can't even pin down what genre it is.
Yeah. Well,
is it science fiction? Is it fantasy?
Yeah. But it's
Is this the real life?
There's a lot of movies that I enjoy that I would fully say, yeah, this is a pretentious film. The people who made this really thought highly of themselves for making it. I think this was this was just a heartfelt movie made by, and I didn't know that, but that makes perfect sense. Made by somebody who was like, I miss my dad. I want to make a movie about missing my dad. And I can totally see that watching it, knowing that about it now.
Yeah. Also coming from somebody who made cop shows. And you could see all that so well. So is this like the great time travel thriller cop movie of all time? No.
Yeah.
But is it, I don't know. I give it like a firm 7 out of 10.
Staring at the IMDb rating here of 7.4, and I'm like, that seems perfectly appropriate. Yep. 7.5.
Okay,
Just
so,
yeah.
Now I'll quiz you here.
All right, go for it.
Quiz you here. This was made on a budget of $30 million. How much money do you think it made?
If memory serves, wasn't this like worldwide like a 45, maybe just shy of $50 million film?
Like to make or gross?
No, like
because
like
to make it
gross.
was 30.
Yeah. To gross, wasn't it? Like it didn't. It got past its budget, but not by a lot. And I mean, usually a movie needs to double its budget to break even. But go ahead.
61 million.
Oh, 6. Okay, so it just just made enough
It
money,
made money.
it made money. It wasn't some like, oh man, it really nailed it. But that's worldwide, not just US.
From what I can see, yes.
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
But it
that
actually
sounds
had
right.
a surprisingly good home release.
Hmm.
A lot of people liked this movie. It was rented a lot and it was bought a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I have the DVD. This is back the era of DVDs. The cases. You remember the DVD cases? They're like cardboard with like the plastic like clasp at the.
Yes, ours was like that too.
Yep.
I hated it.
Oh, it's not a good case,
God,
but that's still on my shelf. I still own this movie on DVD.
Well, the reason why they did that is because they wanted to cut down on the plastic use because they were realizing that they were melting
Yeah.
and deforming.
But yeah, I probably about a third, honestly, about a third of my DVDs. I still have a decent collection. Are in those awful cardboard cases. Man, yeah. But yeah, this was fun. This was just. I mean, I think this was a nice little detour. I mean, we're doing MCU stuff. We did Serenity last week. We're going to be jumping into some Greek mythology coming up here, and then back to the MCU. And this was just a nice little detour of just a very different type of movie than those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. These are the movies why I wanted to do this with you.
Yeah.
Like, I'm super excited to talk about the big ones, but most people already know about the big ones.
Yeah,
I want to talk about the little ones.
Yeah, I don't think there's much we're going to add to the conversation about, Star Wars. It's been all said.
Well, actually, no. You see, I drove 2 hours to the west and I kidnapped George Lucas. I have him right here in my closet waiting for when we do Star Wars. I should probably feed him. It's been a few days.
Okay. Well, in that shocking revelation, yeah, I got nothing else, but this has been a lot of fun, my friend.
It has indeed. Thank you for listening, everybody, and tuning in this long. We're both really tired, so our commentary might be a little bit unhinged tonight.
But we will be back next week with some mythology. Looking forward to it.
Dun, dun, dun.
Night, everybody.
Top motion. I love it. Good night. Goodbye.
Good luck.
There's doors and corners, kid. If you don't clear the room, if you don't come in slow,